I'm going to talk about bluebirds today. I'm the president of the Tennessee Bluebird Society this year, and I've been trying to go around the state and talk about bluebirds. A lot of it's been Zoom this year, but I also have done in the past. I've done a lot in person, and yeah, I talked. Tom contacted me last year, and I did a presentation for the Friends of the Refuges, and since then I've gone to Reelfoot Lake, and I've gone to Lower Hatchie and Hatchie and Discovery Park. I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go along. Here, I've stolen your logo to put it on my slides for today. It was so nice. I like that. Tennessee Bluebird Society is part of the North American Bluebird Society, and we currently have 5 chapters in the state, 5 different clubs. I'm trying to start more. We had a new one just start in the past month. And I will talk to you about that in the end. But we have about almost 300 members around the state, and primarily what we do is try to help bluebirds and other cavity nesting birds, other native cavity nesting birds. And we'll go through there and talk about those. Eastern bluebird, sometimes I show when I do a presentation, I'll explain it's not a blue jay, it's not an indigo bunny. You guys know this, so I skip those. But the eastern bluebird is what we're talking about. It's primarily east of the Mississippi. There's a mountain bluebird and a western bluebird that are very similar. But here, what we have is the eastern bluebird, and they live year round here in Tennessee. Up north, they may migrate. They may migrate down here for the winter, but we have them year round. And everybody loves bluebirds. They're just it's the great bird. They're cute as a button, right? And they're non-aggressive. They're not like some birds that chase everybody away from the bird feeder. They're very tolerant to you check on them and look in and see things happening, and it helps us learn more about birds. And bluebirds are really good about that. The male and the female look about the same. Male's a little brighter, a little more blue. Female's a little duller. And I took these photos last winter off my back porch, and then they'll come to eat. They're insect eaters, so they'll come to eat suet or mealworms if you put them out. I don't know if you can hear that. Listen for a second. That's their call. It's very soft little warble that you'll hear in the spring when their males are trying to attract females. But the one thing about bluebirds is as cute and as nice and as tolerant, as non-aggressive, they need our help. It's one bird that really, really needs our help. And the reason they need our help is because here's a quote that I read, and it was true for me. If in the 80s you were under the age of 40, get your fingers out and figure that out, you probably had never seen a bluebird. And that was true for me. Back in the early 80s, my dad decided he was going to build a couple bluebird boxes. And I said, well, I knew what bluebirds were. I had all kind of bird books and everything. And I said, but we've never had them here. I lived in Western Pennsylvania at the time. We've never seen them. He said, well, I heard that if you put a bluebird box out, you'll get bluebirds. And son of a gun, next summer we had bluebirds in both of those boxes where we had never, ever seen one before. They found the bluebird box, and that's what they need. Between 1900 and in the 70s and early 80s, bluebird populations declined by up to 90%. Now, we all know the story of the bald eagle and how their populations declined because of pesticides. But bluebirds went from 20 million down to approximately 2 million, eastern bluebirds. And the main reason for that is two reasons. House sparrows and starlings are number 1 and 2. And then loss of possible nesting sites was another reason. But house sparrows and starlings, as you know, are both non-native introduced species. They brought them here there's a couple different stories. One is somebody had determined that every bird mentioned in Shakespeare maybe ought to be brought to the United States. That would be a cool thing. And so those are 2 of the birds. They brought lots of them, but those are the 2 that really caught on. Other ones that they brought here died out, but those 2 really thrived. And then the other story was they had a worm of some kind that was eating the trees in Central Park, and they brought the sparrows in hoping that they would eat the worms that were causing the leaves to be eaten. The problem is house sparrows are primarily seed eaters, so that didn't help. It was just a bad mistake. So that's the problem. Today in the United States, house sparrows and starlings are two of the most populous birds in the entire United States. They spread over the whole continent and they're everywhere and they're very aggressive and they take over all available nesting sites and they kill bluebirds when they get a chance. Here's a male house sparrow, and I'm talking to birders, so you know what they are. They sometimes call it English sparrow. It's really a weaver finch, but it's called a sparrow. And the male house sparrow will claim a bluebird box or a hole in a tree or some nesting site, and then he protects that. That's his site, and he tries to attract a female to that site. Any other birds that try to nest in there or even nest nearby, the house sparrows will try to go in the box, kill a bluebird. They'll kill a mother and the babies right on the nest, peck them to death. And I've seen that happen a number of times. So house sparrows are a very, very serious problem. Normally, we don't have house sparrows in suburban areas. If you want to see house sparrows, go to your local supermarket or fast food place, and that's where they always are. Or if you've got horses and cows around, they'll be around there because of the seed. They'll come for the seed. They don't mind nesting nearby. Bluebirds are territorials. In the winter, you can have 8 or 10 bluebirds coming to your back porch and eating mealworms, as I do. But when it comes to be March, then they start establishing territory and pairing off. And a bluebird pair, if they choose a box in your backyard, normally won't let another bluebird pair within 100 yards. They chase them off because that's their territory, that's their feeding territory. House sparrows live in big groups, and so they'll take over a whole area and chase over any other birds. Starlings, you know what those look like. We can solve the starling problem pretty much by, if we make bluebird boxes and make the hole 1.5 inches in diameter, starlings can't get in there, but the house sparrows can, and they can still be a problem. However, if you're familiar with the Peterson Bluebird box, it's kind of one that's an angle, it's smaller at the bottom, wider at the top. That one generally has an oval-shaped hole, and starlings can get in there. I've seen starlings go in there and lay eggs, and so they're meant for bluebirds or other native birds, but starlings can go in there and cause a problem. So now eastern bluebird populations are back. They're back from down to about 2 million, back to about 20 million. And the main reason they're back is because of the number one thing that we can do to help bluebirds build a bluebird box. They need a place to nest. The house sparrows and starlings and the loss of old wooden fence posts that might have had a hole in them, those are all gone. They need a place. And if you put a box up, it's amazing how quickly they find it. I always say, you put a hole in your backyard and a bluebird finds it in 15 minutes. And I've seen a number of times, I'll put a box up in someone's yard and they'll say, well, how soon can I expect bluebirds? And I say, well, you might get them the first nesting, second, and they nest 3 times a summer, up to 2 or 3 times. I don't know how many times I've put a box up in someone's yard. I didn't get 15 minutes away and my phone's ringing saying there's already a bluebird checking out my box. That's how fast they find it. And I'll give you 2 examples. Last year we put up 15 boxes right in the I call it the downtown area of where I live, a suburban area. We put it on the grass strips in the road. There's a strip between the lanes in the road. We put up 15 boxes. Last year, every single box had birds in them, most of them bluebirds, a few chickadees. This year we put up 16 new boxes at a golf course. And I was out there last Monday. And of the 16 boxes, 14 of them have bluebird nests with eggs in them. The other 2, one has a tree swallow and one has a Carolina chickadee. So where were those birds nesting last year? They may not have been able to nest because they didn't have a place to nest. So you can put up a box and help bluebirds find a place to nest. That's the number one thing we can do. We generally make them out of cedar. You can make them out of anything. A box, the cedar after a while starts to look like that. I don't put any protectant on them. I don't put any roof protectant, water seal, paint, anything. And that box that you're looking at has been in my yard for 15 years. And they last for a long time. So if you make a box, there's a lot of boxes you can buy, a lot of nest boxes you can buy. Here's the attributes of the bluebird nest. It has to have all these things. One, it needs to be an approved design. A good place to see an approved design is go to the North American Bluebird Society.org. They have a place on there called fact sheets, and they have plans of a number of boxes that are approved for bluebirds. Boxes that aren't approved for bluebirds are those little fancy ones that have a perch out front that attracts house sparrows. Some boxes may be too big or too small. A good right-sized box, you can find them there. The hole needs to be 1.5 inches in diameter, not bigger, not smaller, 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches keeps out starlings, keeps out cowbirds, and it's a good size for bluebirds. The box must open. Many times you'll see boxes at retail locations, they don't open. If they don't open, you can't clean it out and you can't monitor it. As soon as the babies fledge, and they have 2 to 3 broods a year, as soon as the babies leave, we clean out the box, because the bluebird builds a new nest for every brood. And if you don't clean it out, they may build right on top. They do that if you don't clean it out. That old nest is dirty. It has lice and mites and maybe blowworms. You want to clean that out of there. Also, you don't want the nest to get too close up to the top, to the hole, where a blue jay or a crow or an owl or a hawk could reach in there and yank babies out of there, or even the mother. So clean it out. We monitor them weekly. I'll explain monitoring in a minute. If you see a box that is just built to perfect tolerances, no gaps in any of the under the roof, or no gaps, that's a bad box. You need a box with ventilation. You might get away with a tight box up in the north, but here in Tennessee, the babies will cook if the box doesn't have ventilation. So the boxes I make, they have ventilation under the roof and ventilation in the hole in the floor, a couple holes in the floor, so they can get some air and they don't cook in there. And then another thing that we found, the technical term is a kerf. A kerf is something that the babies can climb out with. We use like 1/4 inch hardware cloth and staple it underneath the hole so babies can climb out when it's time for them to leave. We also found tree swallows without a kerf or a roughed up place under the hole. We found tree swallow, even adult tree swallows, can sometimes not get out of the box. Tree swallows migrate to Central America or Mexico in the winter. They come back after a long flight. They go in that box. And the first year we took over a trail of 25 boxes, we found 7 dead adult tree swallows in 7 different boxes, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. It's because they couldn't get out. Their feet are weak. They had a long trip. They normally have weaker feet. They don't climb well. We put a little piece of hardware cloth under the hole. In the last 5 years, we've never had another tree swallow trapped in a box. So those are things to look for in a box. It doesn't have to be hardware cloth. It can be a roughed up area, like the inside of an old tree, some way that they can, with their claws, they can climb out. That's what you're looking for in a good box. So here's what bluebirds eat. 70% of what they eat is insects. A lot of caterpillars. When the babies are little, they catch spiders, soft little spiders to feed them, and then they'll eat grasshoppers, katydids, crickets. It's amazing to see them stuff a full-grown katydid down the mouth of a little baby, but they handle that. In the winter, they live here all winter, so they can find insects in the winter. They can find insects flying around on a sunny day, or insects along the bark of a tree. But they also eat berries, dogwood berries, holly berries. In the summer, they eat pokewood berries. So it's insects and berries. Some people say, well, yeah, I have this ground up seed and they'll eat that. That's not what they're meant to eat. If they're eating that, they're really hungry. If you want to feed them, the things that they like are live mealworms or dried mealworms or suet. That's what you can attract them to your house if you want to. There's one that looks like a cutworm. That's what you see them eating a lot. The way they hunt is they'll sit on a low branch, a light post, a rain spout, spot an insect on the ground and jump down and get it. That's the way they hunt. They don't like to be in a field where the grass is waist high. They don't like to be in the woods. They like to be in your lawn or a golf course. That's perfect habitat for bluebirds. There's one with a katydid on a rainy day. There's one, if you feed the mealworms and they come and eat them, that's fun to watch. If they come and they load a bunch of mealworms up in their beak like that, you know they've got babies and they're taking those back to the babies. We have bluebirds and we feed them mealworms. Once we see that, we know the babies have hatched. Here's dried meal. You can feed them dried mealworms. They don't like them as well as live ones, obviously, but they will eat them. Dried ones are a little easier to handle. You don't have to keep them in your refrigerator. My wife left a jar out on the porch by mistake, and the bluebirds surrounded it, trying to figure out how they get in there and get them. And they were protecting it. Then suet, they love suet. Suet made out of lard is like animal fat, close to insects. We put chick starter in the suet that we make, because if they're getting lots of suet, they're not getting all the vitamins and minerals they need. Same if they're getting nothing but mealworms, they're not getting everything they need. So when we feed them suet, we get a product at the feed store called chick starter. Mix a little bit of that in there. That has vitamins and minerals that farmers feed to baby chickens, and it helps the bluebirds so they don't get weak bones from eating nothing but just plain suet. Some people feed the heck out of them. I don't like to feed them too much. I like them to go get their own hard-shelled insects to get the calcium they need. Predators can be a big problem with bluebird boxes in your yard. Here's the main predators right here. Gray rat snakes are #1 in the state of Tennessee. Raccoons are right behind them, and house sparrows. Now, the first two catch them and eat them. The house sparrows just kill them and let them there. Sometimes the house sparrow will even build their nest on top of the dead mother and babies. House cats. I know a number of people said, "Oh yeah, I had some great bluebirds," and I said, "Well, how many fledged?" And they said, "Well, none. My house got them. My house cat got them all." Cats can jump right up in there and pick them out of the air, or jump onto the top of the box and reach in and get them. And then house wrens. House wrens can be a problem. It's a native bird. We don't harm them, but we don't like them to nest near bluebirds, because they will go into a bluebird or a tree swallow or chickadee nest, poke holes in the eggs, or take the eggs outside and drop them, or even take babies outside and drop them, because the house wrens want to get that spot. So if we see just sticks in a box, we remove those, because wrens will build fill a number of cavities with sticks and nest on one of those that the female chooses. We assume that most of those sticks are fake dummy nests. We throw the sticks out, and we would prefer they nest in the woods where they're not going to cause problems with other native birds. Here's some other predators. Flying squirrels can go right into a box. They'll kill the mother and they'll eat the head off the mother. If you see that, you know it's a flying squirrel. Ants normally aren't a problem, but they bother the babies by crawling all over them. Blowworms can be a problem. We solve those two problems by putting diatomaceous earth underneath the nest. That'll solve almost all your insect problems. Hawks and owls can be a problem. They can reach in the box and get them. And black bears, I'll tell you about that in a second. Gray rat snake, they can climb anything. #1 predator. I'm sure you probably know people that had a nest of bluebirds and all of a sudden they were missing. The nest was perfectly intact, but everybody was missing, either the eggs or the babies. That's a sign of a gray rat snake. They'll go in the nest, eat everybody, leave, and it just looks like everybody left. Well, they left, but they left in the belly of the gray rat snake. They can climb anything. You need to have a predator guard to protect against those. I'll tell you about those. They can climb 4x4 posts. They can climb right up there. The absolute worst place to put a bluebird box is on a tree, because on a tree, the snakes, the raccoons, the ants, the mice, they can all go right into that box and cause trouble. So that's not a good place. You don't like to open a box and find that inside. We found it twice last year. We have 300 boxes we monitor. Twice we found that. We didn't have predator guards on at the time because we can't afford to put them everywhere. But now we put another 40 predator guards out this year, and that box now has a predator guard. Raccoons, if you find a nest pulled out of the box or on the ground, that's a sign of raccoon. They reach in the box and pull it out and eat whatever is in there, eggs or babies or mother. So here's the best protection against raccoons and rat snakes. It's called a Kingston predator guard. You can look online and see how to make that, or you can buy them. They're pretty expensive when you go to buy them, probably $40 often $40 or more. You can make one for about 10, and you can find plans online. That's a 2-foot high stovepipe, and it wobbles on the pole so that if a raccoon tries to climb it, it wobbles. If a snake tries to climb it, the snake goes up the little pole and can't get by up on the top. Out of 300 boxes, I know of a rat snake getting by one only once, and a raccoon only if you mount the predator guard too low. So I always say it's not 100% effective, but it's 95% effective. There's one mounted on a box, mounted kind of high. We mount them even higher than that these days, a little bit higher under the box. So a 5 or 6 foot rat snake can't reach up and get above that, or raccoon. There's another guard you can use. Some places, like on the golf courses, they have the boxes on 4x4 poles, and a Kingston guard doesn't work on that. So we use a knoll guard, which you've seen those probably. It's a wire cage that goes around the hole. That protects against raccoons from being able to reach in there. It does not protect against rat snakes. They can still get around that, but it does protect against raccoons. And the Bluebirds, we usually put them on after the first egg, but we found out we don't even have to wait. We can put it on. The Bluebird will find their way to the hole, go right, then get in through there. Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks are bird eaters. I don't really mind when they are eating lunch to survive, but they will pick off a bluebird, especially newly fledged bluebirds. Barred owl, we had a case where somebody had just a barred owl flapping like crazy, trying to reach in the box and pull somebody out. That knoll guard that I showed you, the wire cage, that'll protect you against hawks and owls getting into the box, but it doesn't stop them from getting picked off out when they're out flying around. Diatomaceous earth is what we, it's non-toxic. Once the bird has a nest, we wait until there's a nest, and we sprinkle some diatomaceous earth underneath the nest. And if there were ants in there, they just bail out. It chases out ants, glowworms, earwigs. Earwigs don't harm the birds, but they crawl over them, and it causes the birds to be disturbed and not get rest. Lice and mites, we like diatomaceous earths, so that's what we sprinkle underneath. We wait until there's a nest, because when the mother builds a nest, she spins it around and around, and the bottom's the last thing she puts on there. So we don't want to really spin it around and around in the diatomaceous earth, even though it's non-toxic. We like to wait until the nest is complete. And if you come across the box and it's ripped off the pole and laying on the ground, ripped in half, you have a black bear problem. This box the day before had 5 eggs in it. The bear tracks were around there, and the bear ripped it, and I mean, that's 1-inch cedar, just ripped it in half and got in there. Luckily, we have only ever had that happen once, but you can't. I don't know if there's a predator guard to stop a bear. So what else can you find? It's not just bluebirds. There's other native birds that we like to help too. If you look at your bluebird box and you have a couple inches of moss in there with some animal fur on top, that's a Carolina chickadee nest. Tufted titmouse also uses moss, but last year out of 1,000 boxes in Tennessee that the Tennessee Bluebird Society monitored, I only know of one tufted titmouse that nested in the box. They generally like to nest higher, I understand, but if you see moss, it's a Carolina chickadee. Great native bird. We let them go. They only have 1 brood per year. So as soon as they're done, that box is then available for the bluebirds for their 2nd or 3rd nesting. There's the baby chickadees. And they always line their nest with animal fur. And you've seen pictures maybe of somebody's sleeping dog and a chickadee or a tufted titmouse on top of the dog plucking out hair. I've actually seen one in my backyard pulling hair off of a groundhog as the groundhog ate clover. They pull it right off, and they always line their nest with animal fur. If you see that in your box, lots of feathers. This is a tree swallow. They have white eggs. Their nest looks very similar to a bluebird nest. They just use a little coarser material usually. Always has lots of feathers in it. And white eggs. That is a tree swallow nest, and they're great birds. I'd just soon have them in my backyard as a bluebird. They again nest only once a summer usually, so the box. We have a golf course that has lots of tree swallows, and they get a lot of nestings. But as soon as they're done, the nests are available for bluebirds the rest of the summer, so that works out real well. Bluebirds every once in a while have white eggs also, so you have to make sure you got a bluebird or a tree swallow. Bluebirds generally do not have any feathers in them, and we have two different pair, one at the UT Ag Center here in Crossville and one at Roane State Campus, Community College campus, and that each have a pair that has had white eggs 2 years in a row, and they're definitely bluebirds. But that's kind of interesting. There's a baby tree. If you see these sticks in there, that is a house wren, and they fill the box with sticks. We remove the sticks and hope they pick another hole through a stick somewhere else, because they will destroy eggs and even babies, because they want the box. Not as serious a situation as house sparrows, but they can cause trouble. I don't let them nest in my yard. Carolina wren is never a problem. We didn't have any nests in any boxes last year, and they don't cause any problems. They usually nest in crazy places like your barbecue grill or a boot that you've left out on the porch or in your garage. But they don't haven't had any nest in any boxes. If you see that in your bluebird box, you've got trouble. That is the nest, the messy nest with weed seeds and paper and plastic and even cigarette butts sometimes. That's the nest of a house sparrow. Let me go back there. That's a nest of a house sparrow. And for those, we do several things. One, we sometimes spray Pam on the eggs so they don't hatch, which keeps the house sparrow sitting on them for weeks and weeks. Other times we take the nest out and smash the eggs. If we can, we trap the sparrow and euthanize it. Sparrows and starlings are perfectly legal to euthanize. They're non-native birds and cause serious problems. So if you have an area where the house sparrows are overrunning the bluebirds, you either have to take serious steps to try to catch the house sparrows, or you need to remove the bluebird boxes, because I always say you either kill the house sparrows or they're going to kill your bluebirds. And it's not a pretty sight to open a box and see everybody laying there pecked to death. Sometimes the mother gets away, injured and dies hopping along the ground because she's injured so severely. So house sparrows can be serious. If you see that in your box, you've got a flying squirrel living in there, and the only thing you can do is move the box further away from the high den trees. Flying squirrels can cause a problem. They go in that hole like it's not even there. Gray squirrels do not cause a problem. They can't get in the hole. They sometimes try to chew the hole out, but last year in Cumberland County, out of 300 boxes, we had one hole that got chewed out by a gray squirrel. So gray squirrels are really not a problem. So what happens in that box? Well, the bluebirds start to nest here in where I am up on the plateau at 2,000 feet elevation. They start to nest about the third week in March. And by the end of August, everybody's done 2 or 3 broods. Everybody's fledged. Last year, I think we had one box that the last babies fledged on September the 4th or September the 6th. Everybody else was done by the end of August. And then nothing happens again until next summer, end of March. In Tennessee, they can have up to 3 broods a year, often 2, many times 3. It takes them about a week to build a nest. They lay 1 egg a day until all eggs are laid. Only then do they start to sit on the eggs after they're all laid. Then, because of that, all the eggs hatch on the same day. All the babies hatch on the same day. Only extremely rarely does a baby hatch the next day. It's almost always all the same day. And some percentage, like 10 or 15% of the eggs don't hatch. So often you might see 1 egg that didn't hatch. And usually one of the parents removes it, or you could remove it. And then about 2 weeks after the eggs are, the mother starts to sit on them, they hatch. And then 16 to 21 days after hatching, they fledge, usually 16 or 18 days, all the babies leave. They never come back to the box. Once they leave, they're gone forever. They'll never come back. I've seen them come out of the box and fly immediately 100 yards straight up to the tallest tree you can see. Or they can sometimes fly to the ground or fly to a low bush, but they can leave the box first flight, go 100 yards to the top of the tallest tree you can see. And then the parents feed them, mostly the father, for the next couple of weeks. And here's an interesting thing. The nests are very clean. When the babies are fed, they immediately turn over and poop in a little sack. The parents grab that little sack, fly away, and deposit it far from the nest so it doesn't attract predators. So the nest is very clean until the last day when the parents are trying to call the babies out to fledge. They'll stay outside and just call them, and they don't clean out the box that last day. So the last day, when you clean out the nest after the babies leave, there's usually a ring of baby bird poop all around the top of the nest, and that's the only time you'll have a dirty nest like that. So why do we monitor boxes? Well, boxes that are monitored have a higher rate of success. We check for problems. Maybe if there's a wasp nest in there, we take that out. Usually you'll be one little wasp nest with one wasp. If that's in there, the birds won't nest in there. But if the birds are in there, then the wasp won't nest. So we like to make sure that the house is clean. If there's house sparrow problems, we get them out of there. We check for insects each week as we go around. We make repairs to the box if it's needed. And we record all the activity, how many eggs, how many babies fledge. We report that information at the end of the year up to the Tennessee Bluebird Society, up to the North American Bluebird Society, and then up to Cornell University, where they keep track of how birds are going. So that's very important to keep that data. And then we clean out the old nest as soon as the babies leave. So we monitor usually once or twice a week. Once the babies are 12 days old, you got to be a little careful, because if they jump out early, they will never stay back in. And I've talked to people who have done that, and you put them back out and they won't survive. So you have to be careful after 12 days. Clean out the box and don't use chemicals. So there's how we like the boxes that open to down rather than up, because when they open down, you can open the box without worrying about anybody falling out, and you can see in without having to open the box wide. So we open the box, look in, record what's going on, close it up, and leave. That's me looking in. There's my wife looking in. She can't see enough. So we found out the perfect solution, much easier than carrying around a step stool or anything like that. We use a mirror, and by holding the mirror above the nest, you can perfectly see, just as though you're standing on top looking straight down, exactly what's going on in there. There's a bluebird nest. They generally use two different materials, generally either dry grass, like this one, or pine needles, like you can see on this one. That's the two things they use. They don't have a lot of other stuff in there. It's usually a pretty clean nest. Sometimes when you open the box, mom sits tight. Sometimes she flies out. But as soon as you leave, that doesn't bother her. She'll go right back. The babies, when they hatch, now those other 4 eggs are going to all hatch here within a couple of hours. They all hatch together. There's what they are: day 3, day 8, day 11, day 14. They're about ready to go. Then when they fledge, they fly up to a tree. They're hard to see because they're speckled. You have to watch where the parents go to spot them usually. And there's one probably a week or so, probably 2 weeks after they fledge, because it's back at my deck looking for food. And still for another week, mealworms can crawl over their feet, and they don't know what to do with them until the parents pick them up and put them in their mouth, but then they soon learn how. So what can you do to help bluebirds? I'm going to give you some opportunities here. Number one, you can attract bluebirds with suet or mealworms. Put a feeder out for them. That's what they eat. They don't need it. They don't need it in the winter, in the summer, and in the winter they usually do well without it. You can put a nest box in your yard. As long as there's not a neighbor that has one within 100 yards, last year out of 300 boxes that we monitor in Cumberland County, I think all but maybe 5 or 6 had birds in it. Mostly bluebirds, 80% bluebirds, probably 15% tree swallows, and 5% chickadees. So you can put a box in your yard. You can join the Tennessee Bluebird Society to help us protect native cavity nesting birds. You can join the North American Bluebird Society. They put out a magazine 4 times a year. It's a fantastic bird magazine. It tells you all about bluebirds. So you can join those 2 things. You can start a bluebird trail. We consider a bluebird trail 5 boxes that you go out and check once a week and record the results and report them. And some bluebird trails could be 50 boxes long. Reelfoot Lake had something. Tara Dowdy told me they had something like 60 boxes up there, but they weren't being monitored regularly, and they went into disrepair. Some of them were stolen or lost. So they pared that down to 15 good boxes that they are now monitoring on a weekly basis and keeping track of everything. So any bluebird trail needs to be monitored. Otherwise, you get nests on top of nests, you get mice, you get all kinds of trouble. So you need to monitor. You can start a Tennessee Bluebird Society club, and that's what I like to do. I'd like to get one started down in Brownsville. Here's where the clubs are now around the state. We have 5, and we're working on several more. Here's where they are. Here's where the number of members are. Here, this 111 is where I'm located in Cumberland County. 91's over near Knoxville, Loudoun County. The 23 members are brand new just this month down in Chattanooga area. 18 members are a new club that started last year in Cookeville, and Shelby County over near Memphis has 11. I'm looking to start in where these red circles are, places, the Tri-Cities area up in Northeast Tennessee, up around Reelfoot Lake area. This red circle down here, down next to Memphis, that's you guys. I'd really love to get a bluebird club started down there. And you got the advantage of a bluebird club is people work together to help the birds. Trails can get started, boxes can be built and put up. It helps support organizations that support birds. If you start a bluebird club, grant money is available to help you build boxes to build bluebird clubs. To build a box on your own with a predator guard costs in the neighborhood of $30 to $35. And so if you put up a box of 10, there's $350 right there. Our Tennessee Bluebird Society, if you are a club, can help cover 50% of that if you apply for a grant. So there's a way to build boxes and get money to help do it. And then people working together to build boxes and monitoring trails. Here in Cumberland County, we have 111 members. We started a couple of years ago with 8. And then that grew, and every year it grows. And when we have monitors, nobody ever leaves. They become a monitor and go out weekly. We have a waiting list of people to be monitors because nobody ever leaves. They have so much fun doing it. So here's what if you want to start a club down there, I found we need 1 or 2 people that want to take the lead. If you want to start a club down there, contact me. There's my contact information. I will do everything to help you get started. I'll come down there and meet with you. I have information. We've done it around state. We can help you get going. A club costs $125 a year, and that includes the first 25 members. Every additional member is $5 a year. If you would join the Tennessee Bluebird Club as an individual member, at-large member without a club, it's $15 a year. So you get 10 members and it's cheaper to start a club. And we have so much fun. So please contact me if you want to get started down there. I really want to get clubs started more around the state. There's my contact information. And that's the end.